Welcome to Out of Home Insider, the loudest voice in out of home. Today's guest is Glenn Hopper. Glenn is the author of Deep Finance, a guide on how to apply technology in pen and paper industries to unlock new business growth. A marketer with a passion for finance turned career focus, Glenn is a serial startup CFO with a master's degree from Harvard and is an expert at scaling back office automation systems that allow small teams to do more with less and growing teams to scale faster. Glenn shares insights around getting started when you don't know where to start, the differences in private equity and investment and venture capital, which is right for you, and even shares his experience buying Billboards for the family car wash business that sold for an 11.5x multiple by applying the same tips and tricks he shares in today's episode. If you're a media owner looking to grow your business by streamlining clunky manual parts of your business, visit onescreen.ai and click Contact Us. In the How Can We Help box, just type podcast, and I'll be in touch with you personally. Without further ado, let's go.
Welcome, everybody, to the Out of Home Insider Show, a podcast like no other, hosted by the one and only Tim Rowe. Get ready to have some knowledge dropped on you and to be entertained, because nothing's more valuable than food for your brain. So sit back, relax, we're about to dive in as the best industry podcast is about to begin.
Glenn, thanks for being here. I was really excited that we got connected. Kind of weren't sure exactly where we were going to take the conversation, but I think we've got a really good framework today talking about back office automation, PE versus VC money, a lot of things that a lot of businesses, media owners, agencies alike, both big listeners of the show, things that they care about, making their business run smoother and how do I scale it? So we're really excited to have you here, Glenn. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Yeah, Tim, I'm glad to be here. It's so funny that you mentioned our first conversation because I thought, well, what can I say? I don't know the out-of-home industry. What can I say about this? But you and I started talking, and within 2 minutes, we were like, oh, yeah. And just
but let's start there. Let's start with the Billboards, because it was along that conversation that you said, well, actually, I've bought Billboards before, and that's my experience with out of home. So let's start there. You're a Tennessee boy. The family had some car washes. You bought a bunch of Billboards in a past life, yeah?
Yeah, we did. And we, we picked them based on, we wanted them to be near the local. We had about 12 car washes, and we always wanted, not the like interstate billboards, but we wanted to get a big billboard that was close enough to the car wash that you could say ahead on the right. And we had a lot of fun with those because we hired a really funny marketing agency, and I wish I could remember now. It's terrible. Some of the slogans we had on them, but we had a really fun marketing campaign, and people would talk about those billboards, and they got people into the business because they were all directional. They were like, 2 miles ahead on the right, but then they would have some slogan with them also. And it was, we feel like they were pretty successful for us. And it's hard, you think about how many billboards you pass in a day and how many just get filtered out, and it's hard to get an ROI for any kind of advertising, but I don't know, we stuck with it for years with the billboards and put them around every location, and people always talked about them. So yeah, we had a good experience with them.
That's awesome. And it's such a fun format because we all experience it at the same time, whether you're driving a dirty car or a clean car and need a car wash right now, or maybe you wash your car at home. That funny slogan, right? Everyone got to be a part of that. So you're really creating this kind of community experience. It's an extension of the business to be able to be out there. So that's very cool. Since then, you're out of the car wash business. You haven't been doing billboards in a little while, but you've been doing a lot of exciting things in the world of finance. Maybe we should start with like some baseline background. How'd you get into finance, and what is it that you're working on today?
Yeah, so I guess I first got into finance an interesting way. I was an MBA, and I started out in marketing, and left brain and right brain with the marketing people. I sort of defaulted to being the marketing numbers guy, and it went from me just trying to, like I was saying, ROI, me trying to justify budget for something that I wanted to do, a product I wanted to build or whatever. And I'd put together these just were pretty basic templates, but the marketing people were like, mind blown. That's Excel. I don't know. But anyway, it was, so because of that though, anytime marketing needed something financial, they would come to me, and I ended up, while I was in marketing, I started getting more and more interested in the numbers aspect of it, and the budget, and trying to justify projects in the financials. And it felt, marketing is fun, and it's like writing the book and some of the other stuff that I've done in life. But it's hard to have like a tangible scorecard for it. And there's something about my OCD brain that drew me to, it's like numbers. They're either right or wrong. You either hit them or you don't. It's not subjective in any way. And so I kind of drifted towards finance. And then my first finance role was, I was the finance guy for the chief operating officer, basically because he didn't want to rely on the finance department to give him his information. So he built his own like closet finance group, and I ran that. But it worked out great for me, because instead of just coming up through the finance ranks and not really understanding what it's like to be in operations or to be in sales and marketing, and, to not be in the trenches, it's easy to shoot down people's ideas because they don't fit the budget or whatever. And I think coming in with a kind of a varied experience has really helped me in my finance career.
What type of company or companies did that experience take place at? Was this at a media company or just a company that was doing marketing? And
so this was so it was at a telecommunications company in the early 2000s, and it was I was straight out of the Navy, straight out of business school, and I was. I thought for sure that marketing was the way I was going to go. I mean, I love, what you guys are doing. And I was a product manager for some web-based products. And the products that I was managing didn't have a lot of budget. And I think I always say necessity is the mother of invention. And because I was trying to justify getting more budget to get my projects built or getting more resource time, I just started hammering home on the financials. And that's,
makes a lot of sense. It makes perfect sense now. And along the way, I'm guessing that's where you started to be exposed to like the back office infrastructure of businesses that are trying to scale, going from 0 to 1. And you started to see some common themes through that. Where did you start to pick at that?
Yeah. So telecom, it was a startup. It was a well-funded startup, and but it still was the same problems that whether you're bootstrapping or funded or whatever, until you're cash flow positive and you're trying to create something new and get it off the ground, you don't have a lot of resources. So again, necessity makes you look for things that you otherwise may not. And in my early days of finance, I had a very small team that we were all overworked, and we were trying to do things, and we were relying more on people's abilities than on systems. And we ended up having a pretty big error that I thought was going to end my finance career, honestly, but it was, we ended up solving for it. It was basically, we had overlooked a $1.5 million invoice in our budgeting, and it was on a total budget of about $17 million. So, you're almost 10% off budget on this one invoice. We had a meeting with Goldman Sachs coming. It was a nightmare coming up. And anyway, after that, I thought, I'm either going to figure out how to get a handle on this and never be in this situation again, or I'm going to go teach high school or something. I don't know, just get out of the business world altogether.
I made a $30,000 error recently, and I thought that was it for me. So 1.5.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. So, but it really has put me, that was in about, I guess about 2003. And I've been on this passionate life's mission since then to automate and eliminate those kind of human error sort of mistakes that people can make when they don't have the right systems. So this is really, it's truly been a passion for me. It's probably outside looking in, it's a super boring passion, but it's, finance automation.
It's the passion that makes sure we get paid. So
that's right.
I think that's something we can all be passionate about. What are the most common mistakes or the most commonly overlooked challenges or problems? Like what does that look like? If somebody's listening right now and maybe they're thinking, I think I have that problem, I'm not sure if I have that problem. How do you know if you have that problem?
Yeah. So I feel like your audience is probably a lot of like early stage startups. Do you feel like you end up talking
It's
to
a
that
good,
group a lot.
it's a good mix. So we've got a lot of, and I'm excited to talk about like the difference between PE and VC money later on in the conversation. So we've got billboard owners, we've got media owners, that make up a large part of the listening audience. And then we have a lot of new technology companies in the space, tech startups like ourselves at OneScreen. And then buyers and sellers of all of those things. So it could be an account executive who's frustrated with my process stinks and I got no tools to help me do my job, to a media owner or an agency owner who they've got 10 or 20 people and they're wondering, how do I get to 30? How do I get to 40? How do I build more business? So you've got a wide spectrum with varying degrees, but I think most folks are looking for ways to do better business.
Yeah. So, this is the kind of stuff you could talk about all day, but here's an example of what I think maybe is a common situation. I'll try to apply it to anything where you're in sales and you're managing inventory. And there's so many, there are niche software products out there that I'm sure they have them for billboard inventory and for all the other.
Shoot, we're building one of them.
Yeah. So, so if people aren't using that, what are they doing? They've got a spreadsheet that maybe it's a shared spreadsheet on like a SharePoint drive or something, or it's in Dropbox and people open it and they put in, hey, I just sold this inventory for these months and whatever, but somebody fat fingers and puts the wrong month in, and you've got somebody else who wants the billboard, and you're stepping all over each other. And then
that is real life. That is exactly a thing that happens.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's because if you think about when you don't have the right tools in place, you try to make things work. Like, it's hilarious to me every time I see somebody use Excel, almost like Word. Like, they've got in one cell, they've got a header, and then below it, they're writing a whole sentence in a single cell.
Writing blogs in Excel.
Yes. And it's just when you don't have the right tools, you end up doing things that are inefficient and where you can make mistakes. And that's just a microcosm. If you take that and you say, this is how we're managing our inventory, this is what we're doing, and then there's a shared file, go in, put it in. Well, I've done expense reports for companies for years. And it's funny, all the way up until I went to fully automated expense reporting, every company would have an Excel template that they would send around. All the employees would fill it out. And inevitably, everyone who used it would break it in a weird way that you're like, I didn't even know Excel could do that. The cells are yellow and flashing at me.
People are there are a lot of nodding heads right now and laughing in cars, I think, because that's totally something that's happened to, I think, all of us at some point.
Yeah. So, I mean, you use the tools you have. And as the amazing thing is, as long as I've been doing this, more and more tools have become available. So I think it's really about the automation. I bet, and some people are fortunate enough that they have a friendly developer or a relationship with a developing group that they can get custom stuff built. But the technology is going so fast. I swear it. I feel like there's some kind of off-the-shelf software that solves any problem for any industry, like what you guys are building right now. And it's just going to get better. It's about knowing what's out there and then working smarter and not harder.
And that's a lot of what we're doing, is taking, some existing solutions, stitching them together to make a lot of that mechanical process that's being done manually, just make it easier for folks to manage those things. So I think you've described a scenario that a lot of folks listening right now can relate to. So, okay, I'm in that scenario. Where do I start? What are the most important foundational things to get right first?
Yeah, I'm 17-year-old me looking at at late 40s me talking about this. It just sounds so boring, cringy, but
I'm geeking out over here. Yeah. So I love it.
So here's the thing. I've been really on this soapbox lately, and I've talked to private equity guys. I've talked to I did an article recently. I interviewed a finance professor at Emory, a private equity guy, and some people in business and some founders. And what the premise that I'm putting out now, and I'm getting more and more data to validate this, including my own personal experience, is if you automate your back office and if you have an efficient back office, you are not only making things easier right now and more efficient right now, but you're actually adding value to the business. It becomes like an internal intellectual property. So, and we can talk more about PE and VC in a minute, but if you're going to a private equity group and asking for money, so say you've been through kind of maybe a friends and family round or angel round or whatever, or you've bootstrapped and you're at a point where you're operating pretty well and you know that you could go and raise money right now. When you talk to a private equity group, it's if you look like a mom and pop business and you kind of, they're going to ask really detailed, hard questions about your margins, your expenses, your growth model and all that. And if you don't have good data, it's going to be hard to get past the gatekeeper in an investment group. So if you can, like, automation leads to having better data and more ability to report on your business. So to me, where you start with, you look at all the processes in your business and you, from end to end, from whether it's our first, if it's a customer coming to your website, whatever you're using, HubSpot, or I'm not trying to shill for any particular CRM or anything, but whatever you're using in your website, if maybe you don't even have, you just have a brochureware kind of website up with not much going on. It's like, well, now it's time to run some Google Analytics or something, or start collecting data up there, and use a CRM or whatever tool you can put in place. And then, okay, what happens in the customer journey from prospect to one, to provisioning, to billing, to churning off eventually, whatever it is. And you look at each step in the process, and it's called, I've got a version that I do, that started from an ISO 9000 audit, which is really just people. I mean, it's the first thing I do when I come to a company. I'm kind of this gun for hire these days, and I come into companies and I help them fix their systems. But you talk about a hard introduction to people as you say, okay, hi, I'm Glenn. I'm here to help, and we're going to do an ISO 9000 audit where you basically explain from what you do all day, every day, and tell me where your pain points are. And people hate that at first. But once if you don't document it and you don't know what it is, you may not realize there's a certain individual that's a gatekeeper in the company, or there's a certain process that takes way too long, or we've got multiple people trying to enter data on one spreadsheet and they're writing over each other's. You may not realize where those errors are, but so you go through and you identify that end-to-end process, you find the pain points, and those are the ones you solve for first.
When you make it sound that easy, Glenn, to get started, why doesn't everybody do it? Let's play a game real quick, because it's something you made me think of. If you had two companies that did the same thing, or one company pre-back office tools and having like clean data and being able to present themselves as a proper company, what are we talking about? And you don't need to put a number to it, but maybe a percentage in valuation. A company that has buttoned up systems, that has all of the things that you just described, versus that same company as itself, same assets, all the same things, but without it. What are we talking about?
So the biggest one to me, and I don't have anecdotal evidence, and I can speak to that. Like, I know when we had the car wash business, we were the original offer that we had when we sold the business was about 10 times our EBITDA. And once they got in to due diligence and looking at it and looking at all the information we had, there's valuations are a tricky thing, because when you're selling a business or selling a home, it's whatever somebody will pay for it is what it's worth.
Right.
But we got in this case, there was some negotiation. There might've been some other things going on, but we got into negotiation with this company, had an offer letter already in place. They got into our systems and we were so buttoned up and on it. And then, when you're in that place, you're kind of, you can be a little coy and just be like, hey, I got my stuff together. And anyway, so there was some back and forth.
You're coming from a position of confidence where
Yes.
Hey, I know my business.
Yeah.
And you really want my business because I know my business.
Yeah. So in that case, we went from a 10x EBITDA to 11.5x EBITDA. And that was, that's one instance. I don't have a big enough data set, but I know it was because we had the data, we had the confidence, and, so they paid a premium for the data, but we were able to demand a higher premium, because when they tried to what happens in these negotiations is in an acquisition. I'm not talking about when you're doing fundraising, but an acquisition, all along the way, the company that's buying, especially in a strategic acquisition, they think, hey, we're the big fish here. We've got, we're going to tell you how it is. And when you can answer to them, and maybe with better and more detailed data than they have, then suddenly your stock rises. So that's an anecdotal example, but we can talk more about how it works. But I guess on a PE side, I would say, in addition to the increased valuation, if a company looks really good on the surface and a private equity investor is interested in investing, and then because they'll come in, they'll send a team to the business, they'll go through and do basically
boots on the ground.
Yeah, boots on the ground. If they're good, they're not going to just look at a business plan and just stroke a check. They're going to get in there and really understand it. And if they get in there and they see, you're not going to believe how messed up this is and that is, they may still invest, but what they think of your business is your stock's going to fall a little bit. They may say, but okay, we're going to invest. We're going to put somebody on the board. You couldn't do it yourself. So we're going to commit resources to improving your processes. And then we're going to look at how to grow your business. But then they're going to devalue it because that means it's going to take longer to get the business to a liquidity event. And, PE groups are trying to get 4 to 6 years max and they're out. So if they've got to back up and then help you get on the rails, then it's going to decrease the value, or they may just pass. If they're looking at two companies, one's got it together and the other one doesn't, the one that doesn't, even if their revenue's higher, I could see them taking a pass and say, this company's worth investing in because they're set up to scale.
And what is it? What is the win for a private equity group? Why do they, or why would they want to invest in a billboard owner? We see a lot of PE money coming through the billboard business. For someone that's listening, is like, why does it even matter? What is private equity money, and what's the win for them?
Yeah. So with private equity, they're looking for, and there's a million different kinds of funds for any kind of sector or size or, age of business or whatever. There are multiple companies that look at it in different ways. There's a lot that just like to take a partial ownership in founder-led businesses and do what I just said, where founders can be great. They have a great idea. They build up this great business, but maybe they don't have a business school background or, haven't been in the broader business world. So they say the private equity company is going to invest in something when they believe they can add value to it over a course of 3 to 5, maybe 6. 3 would be on the early side. Really, 4 to 6 years is kind of that window. But they're trying to turn businesses every 4 to 5 years, and they want to make, they want to get a return on their investment. So they have to believe that they can come in and add value. So if it's a billboard company, maybe it's something that somebody's grandfather started as a passive business. They had some real estate. They started throwing up some signs, and they, kind of halfway manage it, but aren't really out there aggressively selling. It's just, they've got this inventory and it sells. And if they see, if something were happening that the industry were undervalued, or if there were a company that were undervalued, maybe the company would be undervalued because somebody was running it passively. And if they had enough inventory that makes sense that if you came in and actively did this and you put in management and sold it, then they could turn a profit on it. Or what we see a lot, private equity groups love to jump in to industries where there's consolidation. So maybe there's it used to be a bunch of really small, one-off, local, mini chains or individual items. If they see, hey, we could put money in this one company, and this one company is operating so well that they would be able to take on additional companies. And instead of organic growth, where you're just grinding it out and selling one by one, that you can bring in other territories, other companies, and expand your market share that way. And if they love that, if a private equity group sees that you could be the lead on a consolidation effort, and they could come in, get your company that maybe does 2 million in revenue, buy this one that does 300,000 in revenue, this one that does 400,000. Suddenly, over the course of these 4 to 6 years, they've turned a $2 million business into a $10 million business. They've bought these other companies at a value because the other companies don't have the resources that this bigger one does. And then by the time they sell it, they've got this full economies of scale, and they've grown the business. And that's what happened when we had the car washes. they were bought by a company that was funded by Leonard Green, one of the biggest private equity groups in the world, and they put like $400 million in. We're rolling up car washes all over the country. And there's other private equity groups that are doing it too. And it's interesting because for years no one would have thought of the car wash industry as something where you would have private equity investment, because they're expensive to build. There was kind of a stigma around them, and people saw that there wasn't much in the way of economies of scale, but then they figured out that there were. And I think our company, we really figured it out, growing, from none to 12 stores. We started to see really the benefits. And advertising is a great one, where you're not just advertising for a single location. When you're advertising for 12, you have a broader reach. And but that's the kind of stuff PE looks for.
So similar as you're describing that to particularly the billboard part of out of home, and that it is, maybe there is a bit of a stigma that it's old school and like it's a pen and paper industry, right? This is hard. It's fragmented. We're seeing a lot of PE consolidation right now. The bigger getting bigger, and we're seeing a lot of smaller billboard plants get rolled up and turned into really significant players in the industry. It's happening really quickly. So when thinking about, we've got tech startups in out of home listening to this, we've got billboard owners listening to this. It sounds like we've got some pretty good ideas around PE money. Like, what's the difference between PE and VC money? And for the startup that maybe is better suited for VC money, maybe we could walk through some of the like the 101 there, because we've got a lot of new startups to out of home. It's an industry that, if we looked at it on a timetable, we're probably like 2008 of the internet. So think back to 2008, all of these young startups, DoubleClick, YouTube, right? They were not anything then. Now they're billion-dollar companies. Now we're in the same place for out of home. So for those tech startups that are thinking about, I've got to go raise VC money, what does that actually mean? And what are some of those checks and balances that they should be thinking about?
Yeah. So private equity, it's funny, the people lump them together a lot, but the way private equity and VC look at businesses are very different. So private equity they're in between the way a bank who's completely risk averse and a degenerate gambler. Like so there's degenerate gambler on the far left, then you go VC, then you go like sort of private equity and into some mezzanine or whatever. And then at the far right is the banker. So VC, well, let me back up. Private equity, when they come into a business, they want to see something established, something that those early risk where you're trying to define what the product is. You don't even really know who you are yet. You've got a good management team, a good idea. You're doing all this kind of cowboy stuff, and you're pivoting as you go and trying to define who you are. For the most part, private equity guys don't want to touch that. They would rather you take all those lumps, because think of how many businesses never get out of that stage. So if you can avoid that stage, then you can avoid that level of risk. And so you say, and you don't have to be cash flow positive to have private equity in, but you need a clear path to it. And what I was talking about, systems and automation and data, when you talk to a private equity group, you need to have a pretty clear, like, this is the customers we have now. This is how many we've added over the last 12 months or what, however long your business is. And this is a thoughtful, rational, realistic way that we're going to get to cash flow positive. And this is what we want to do with the money that we're raising right now. We don't think this round will get us all the way to cash flow positive, but if we have this money right now, we can buy this many more assets. We can hire this many more people. This is exactly what we want to do with the round. And here's our path to profitability. So if I back up to the left of the scale I was talking about before, about the VC people, they are casting a wider net, and they're putting money in earlier in companies. They may do subsequent rounds, but VCs are looking at companies in those, you've got your pitch deck or even your elevator pitch, and you, in 45 seconds, you tell the VC what your idea is, who you are, how you're going to change the world. And you'll get their interest, because the VC, it's like if you sit at the roulette table and there's 36 or whatever numbers at the roulette table, they're putting their chips on different numbers. So 20 different numbers. And just one of them has to hit, and they can, we won't get into the exact odds, but they know that a lot of the businesses they invest in are going to fail, but they're getting in so early, and they can, when you're doing these pre-money valuations, they can kind of call the shots. They can set valuations where they want. They can make them, they can lever up and say, we only value your business at 1.5. We're going to give you $300,000, and we're going to take 20% of your. I don't know, hope my math is right there. Anyway, it's really hard to come up with a valuation for a business. So the VC guys they'll look at an idea. If they think it's a cool idea and they like the management team because the management team has had success prior, or they've got some kind of pedigree, or they've got something, some charisma or some spark to them, the VC guys will bet on a management team almost more than they'll bet on financials. And actually, maybe not almost, maybe really they are betting more on this idea really resonates with me. If it works, it's going to change the world. And this management team really resonates with me. They are thinking out of the box and they can do this. So they want bigger returns, and they're willing to gamble a little more, and they will come in earlier. That said, though, you still have to have your stuff together. But if you're talking to VC, you're probably doing it before, you maybe don't even, if you did that audit of end to end, you may not have even defined that yet by the time you're talking to VC. But it's also hard to approach VC, really. I mean, you might have some local smaller group doing private placement, but if you're not in Silicon Valley and have that sort of it's hard to get to them. But PE groups are, they're more a standard approachable group. And if you've got the right business plan and models and a little bit of performance behind you, they're easier to work to, not easier to work with, but easier to get the attention of.
And we arrive back at the importance of back office tools, especially when we're thinking about scaling our business, possibly taking money to accelerate that scale. With that being said, Glenn, you've got a book that just came out. Where do folks find that? Tell us a little bit about what's in that. How do folks get in touch with you and learn more about what you do?
Actually, I have a copy of it right here. It's Deep Finance, Corporate Finance in the Information Age. It's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, wherever fine books are sold.
Wherever fine books are sold. And definitely we link to fine books. It's in the show notes. It's in the description. If you want to get a copy, just go to the show notes or description. But what are they going to find? What are they going to learn in that?
Yeah. So I've realized I've been doing this virtual book tour for a while now. And I've realized as I've talked to more and more podcasters like yourself and all these different industries, that because I've been in the startup space for 20 years now, that I'm really talking to in the book, even though I didn't mean that specifically was going to be my audience, it's who I'm talking to in the book. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, they've all got this handled. They have access to more data than we could ever even fathom. They've got full massive teams that are bigger than all of our companies put together, that are all they're doing is working on analytics. So in the book, I talk about the future of the finance function, but the reason I say the future of the finance function is because I believe that all this analytics and business intelligence should live under the finance department. And the truth is, in a small business, you're not going to have, enough people that are going to be, this guy does finance, this guy does analytics. It's going to be a few skill players that are doing everything. So I think that numbers guys, if you're already doing the financials, then you've got a propensity for the numbers to do the other business intelligence and analytics. And it's all tied together with the automation. And I talk about automation in the book too, for everything from your CRM to your project management to your inventory management, automating all those and making it more efficient. The business runs better. You're using your time better so that you're helping to add value to the business rather than going through some convoluted system that was just stapled together because that's how you did it when you first started.
Doing more of the working on your business than working in your business. Glenn, for anyone listening that wants to skip the book and just get right to you, how do they get in touch with you? Do you have a website? Where are you most active on social? How do folks follow you and learn more?
I think LinkedIn is probably the best way to connect with me. And I'm on Twitter, but I tweet about once a month, and I think I have 3 followers. One of them's my mom, probably. I don't know.
My mom doesn't follow me yet, so you got me beat.
So the fact that my mom does follow me on Twitter probably keeps me from saying the stuff that I really would like to say.
So we'll make sure to link to your LinkedIn as well. Glenn, this has been a master's class, and I think a lot of things that are on a lot of minds in our industry. Out of home, it's the only traditional medium that's continued to grow over the last decade. We saw a huge resurgence from brands, kind of post COVID, getting back into the real world with their brands. And as the cost to acquire a customer on the internet continues to go up, and as privacy restrictions become more expansive, and I think that that's a generally a good thing. We have a right to our privacy and our own data. But as those things expand, brands that have generally scaled online are turning to offline channels. As that money's flooding into out of home, everything we talked about here today becomes mission critical. Back office automation to be able to scale, to take more of that money, to be able to present accurate numbers to potential investors and those sorts of folks along the way. So Glenn, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We'll have to do it again sometime here in the near future.
Tim, I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. If you found this to be helpful, please share it with somebody else who could benefit. As always, make sure to smash that subscribe button down there in the corner. Leave a review if you're listening on iTunes. Those reviews certainly help us out, and we'll see y'all next time.
Quarter century, I finally came to my senses. I finally got my hand up on the tinted Benz, kid. I see the world clear through my tinted lenses. With the dream and the drive, the possibilities endless. Now print that, send this all the way to Tokyo. Take a trip down south, down to Mexico. Next stop, Shanghai, the world-class trade show. First class all the way, cause that's how we roll. Yeah, call us the rock star businessman. Rockin' shows, we handle business, man. We got our own future in the palm of our hands, cause divided